Hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of Harmony TV. I'm so happy you're here. I'm Michelle Aspinwall. This is my assistant, Kristen. She keeps me on task, asks great questions, and as always, puts links in the comments to anything I talk about or anything that sponsors our program. This week, I've decided to do a 3-part talk on sleep. I think one of the greatest aspects that changes for women in midlife or whenever motherhood happens, if indeed it does happen, if you choose it, is our sleep gets altered. And one thing I'm here to do is to bust some sleep myths, give you some great tips on how to improve your sleep, and just in case you needed more incentive, give you a few incentives to understand why boosting your sleep is so incredibly important. So this is going to be a 3-part series, like I said. So this week, I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep, about one of the greatest hormones that helps women to understand sleep and also feel better from any kind of hormonal stuff that's going on. And then we're going to talk about in the next 2 following weeks, people who have trouble staying asleep and people who have trouble waking up feeling rested. But today is going to be all about sleep and how to help yourself prepare for a fantastic night's sleep on the front end, and also how to help you get ready to fall asleep fast and effectively. So that is today. All right, let's start out by talking about one of the strongest antioxidants we have in our body. It's melatonin. Now, with a lot of things in women's health, I think you guys have heard me talk about estrogen and progesterone. There's not a woman on the planet, I think, who's not heard those 2 words. And they really do go in conjunction. They're like the yin and the yang of women's health. Melatonin and serotonin are very similar. It's very hard to talk about melatonin without talking about serotonin. So I'm only going to bring up serotonin ever so slightly because it does relate to melatonin and it's completely important to today's talk on sleep and having quality sleep, and as well as getting to sleep in the most effective way. Because getting to sleep is, I think, something that we've all suffered through at some point or another, whether it's stress related, whether it's alcohol induced, or whether it is some kind of external event. Maybe your partner snores, maybe you're a tosser and turner, maybe it's hard with temperature because maybe you guys are disagreeing on temperature. There's a lot of things that changes our sleep, right? Helps us or keeps us from getting to sleep easily. So what I want to talk about today is the serotonin melatonin exchange. So within the body, there are these yin and yang cycles. And so sleep, or our diurnal rhythm, so that's our relationship to both the daylight and the nighttime, they are intimately connected, very much so like estrogen and progesterone. They are intimately connected. When one goes up, the other one goes down, and vice versa. And the same is true with melatonin and serotonin, but not on a 28 to 30-day cycle, but rather on a 24-hour cycle. And I know a lot of you probably heard of night shift workers having sleep disruptions. But the surprising thing I have noticed in testing my hormones over the past 5 years, which I've been doing myself through Precision Analytics, the Dutch test, which I talk about all the time on Harmony TV. The Dutch test is something that also tests melatonin. So it's a way for women to actually understand and know what their melatonin levels are. So I just wanted to put that in there. So in understanding melatonin and serotonin, so serotonin, the majority of it is produced in the gut. Melatonin is produced in the brain, right, through the pineal gland. That's where it is produced and then sent through the body. It is derived from both tryptophan and also serotonin. So these are the 2 precursors to the production of melatonin. And it's directly proportionate to how much sunlight you get during the day and how much dark, black, no light you get at night. So these 2 elements are what help produce a healthy level of melatonin. And then what you eat and how much sunlight you get during the day are 2 of the ways that you can help produce adequate amounts of serotonin, which help to balance and then trigger the production of melatonin. So we've talked a lot about food. Everybody knows I'm known for food. I'm known for how to understand your constitution, how to strategically combine foods for your stage of life, whether you're in your 30s or your 40s or your 50s or beyond. And sleep is one of the elements that I work with women a lot on because it is something that affects nearly every woman at some point in their life. And understanding that we're all going to have times where we have trouble with sleep. But overall and over time, you want to make sure that getting to sleep and having a restful sleep, meaning you wake up feeling rested, and staying asleep through the night are three elements that are supremely important to you. And that when you have a pattern of not being able to fall asleep, not being able to stay asleep, or not waking up rested, that you address it in a timely manner, and you address it with seriousness and put some intention and be proactive, because it will over time affect your health, especially your hormonal health. So let's talk about, the pineal gland. Let's go back to the pineal gland. So the pineal gland is up here in the brain. It's sort of in between the eyes going in, and it is connected to one of our energetic centers, the third eye center. Now, there are a lot of different things that can help support the pineal gland, but one of the elements that I've talked about in the past that deals with pineal, you don't want the pineal gland to get calcified. And there are certain things that calcify the pineal gland that we want to stay away from. Fluoride, and fluoride in the water in particular, is one of the biggest elements that calcifies the pineal gland. So if we keep and have and maintain a healthy pineal gland, then it helps to regulate and produce melatonin. Another element is eating the really dark foods, the dark colored blue, purple, and red foods. Those all are very beneficial in helping to activate and keep the pineal gland in good health. So what are some of those foods? Beets, blueberries, dark red radicchio, black radish, black beans, purple kale, things like that. Think of foods that have a dark color to them, a dark pigment, and that pigment is really great for both the pineal and the crown, which of course houses the central nervous system. Now, why is melatonin so important? Melatonin is not just your sleep hormone, the hormone that actually helps you wind down and get ready for sleep. So serotonin is the hormone that we produce in the gut, and it comes in through our eyes. So if you are one of those women who sleeps with an eye mask, have you ever noticed that when you take the eye mask off and the light enters your eyes, you have a really hard time getting back to sleep? Well, that is because the light from the sun, or any kind of light, it could be from a light next to your bed or sunlight or a device, it activates this hormonal production in the body. Now, this is important because what we want it to do is we want serotonin to rev up during the day. We want it to be heightened by noon, and then we want it to slowly back down through the day until we get to sort of the 4 or 5 o'clock time. And that's when melatonin starts to rise. Now, it's a very slow, it should be a very gradual shift. There's other hormones at play also, cortisol being one of them. But we want melatonin to slowly come up and then build and build and build until around between 9 and 9:30, if you've ever noticed, and you're connected to your body and your diurnal rhythm is in rhythm, this is when you start to have the very beginnings of a pang of wanting to go to sleep. Now, a lot of people, if you're sitting in front of the TV, watching TV, you might doze for a few minutes between like 9 and 9:20. If you pay attention to that and you actually go to sleep then, you will wake up more around sunrise. Now, a lot of us are like, but wait, I get home from work at 7, or the kids go to bed at 8 or 9, and this is my only time to myself. Well, the quality of your sleep between 9 and 11 is a much higher quality of sleep than it is between 5 and 7 a.m. So it's just something to think about. Again, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just providing the information. Do with it what you will, because I know that the women that follow me are self-led, intelligent, and want the best for their bodies. So knowing that sleep is of the most importance, especially to the endocrine system, which, ladies, This is why we tend to have a higher incidence of thyroid disease, of endocrine disrupting disease, whether that be adrenal fatigue, thyroid disease, hypothyroidism, hypo, Graves' disease, all of that. These are all endocrine system diseases, and they begin with the pushing through the natural rhythms of the body. So in understanding that sleep is really important, melatonin rises, and then is very pronounced, like I said, between 9 and 10, trying to get you to go to sleep. Now, here's the tricky thing, right? If you don't listen to that, then you get a surge, and then you have a nice awake cycle for another 60 to 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours, depending on, your serotonin production, depending on if it's just that you've pushed through that sleepiness or you're actually in front of a device, which really shifts our light. Now, going back to other elements that melatonin is really helpful for, I want to go through some of these. Now, if you suffer from some of these, looking at your melatonin, looking at your sleep is a really important part. One of them is GERD. I work with a lot of women that have some sort of digestive issue that turns into either GERD or heartburn or an unsettled stomach. This usually has to do with something with the serotonin, melatonin production. Now, that could be a food sensitivity. It could be that you're not producing enough melatonin. There's a lot of things. But GERD is one of those elements that is helped by melatonin production. All right, neuroplasticity. So any kind of brain issues. Melatonin is really protective to the brain. It helps to build a very strong blood-brain barrier, which we want. We don't want toxins. We don't want enzymes from food, dairy in particular, to cross that blood-brain barrier. So it makes a really strong blood-brain barrier, which is good. It's positive. And any of those brain inflammatory diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, all of that, melatonin is a key player in either preventing them or helping reverse. Now, melatonin, because it's a very powerful antioxidant, it helps with oxidative stress. So antioxidant means when our cells die, there's an oxidation that happens. And when we eat antioxidants and produce enough very powerful antioxidant hormones like melatonin, it actually helps with oxidative stress. Another one is it's very protective to the immune system, and particularly the thymus gland and the T cells. Now, there's not a lot of talk about the T cells in the wellness industry, but this is very, very much related to cancer. So if you are one of those women who wants to prevent cancer, especially as we age, checking your melatonin levels is incredibly important, especially where it comes to estrogen dominant cancers, which there are, that is a very predominant cancer subset of cancers for women in like the menopause, postmenopausal years. Another one is it also protects against radiation. So radiation, we get radiation from everything. We get radiation from our phones or tablets. We get radiation from flying in airplanes. That's one of the biggest radiation. We're so much closer to the sun. Flying in a metal tank at that. Radiation is also through like any kind of device where it scans us, any kind of x-rays or MRIs, these are all radiation. It protects our mitochondria. Now, our mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. So that's where the energy comes from. So if you're someone who suffers from like fatigue or brain fog or any kind of like element where you don't feel like really sharp in the brain, looking to melatonin is also very important. And the last one I want to say is it's an inflammation reducer. Ladies, have you ever noticed on nights where you don't sleep well or you don't get enough sleep or you don't wake up feeling rested? Have you ever noticed that you're like a little puffy in the face or puffy maybe in the middle? This is directly related to melatonin production that isn't happening. And if you have it over time, you can see a lot of women I work with, we take a picture when we first start working together, and then we take a picture a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, and they are shocked by what their face looks like, the reduction in inflammation. Because not a lot of women are carrying actual weight. You can't carry that much weight in your face, certainly not as much proportionately as you can in your thighs or hips or belly. in your face, right? Like your face isn't as big. It's like 1 square foot of actual real estate. But inflammation is a whole different story. And women really see the difference in inflammation when they change lifestyle elements in their daily life, which helps to build good sleep habits, good eating habits, and good self-care habits. And then they see the reduction of inflammation. And part of that's melatonin. Okay. Kristen, did I miss anything?
I was going to ask you, how can people check their melatonin levels?
That's a great question. So I mentioned the Dutch test. The Dutch test is a urine test that I talk about all the time here on Harmony TV, and it's something that I work with women intimately on. Now, some doctors are starting to catch on and use the Dutch test in their practice. It's understanding what to do with those results. So one of the hormones and neurotransmitters that the Dutch test is melatonin levels. And it's one of the first things that I look at. Not only do I look at estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, which are the 3 other hormones that the Dutch test is really amazing at, not only looking at levels, but also looking at how the body metabolizes those, especially estrogen, but melatonin levels. Because again, I want to make sure that we're not just checking mammograms, right? Like mammograms, of course, mammography is very important for those who it's right for. But estrogenic cancers can happen everywhere. And if there is a way for me to alert a woman or to help a woman understand that how important sleep is and how to get better sleep, this Dutch test, it's yet another reason why I test myself. I was doing it every 2 years. Now I'm doing it every year as I get closer to menopause, because I want to make sure for myself that I'm doing as much as I can to be proactive in preventing any kind of, damage or issue or hormonal disharmony that I can. So the Dutch test is amazing. And if you're not familiar with it, Kristen's going to put the link in the comments below. And if you are one of those really super proactive women right now who is like, I am dying to know and understand this, I also have a 3-session program where we do the test, we read the test, and then we create a protocol based on your unique results. Now, again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not dealing in any kind of hormone replacement therapy, but I get you ready for if you do need hormone replacement therapy or you desire hormone replacement therapy. We want to make sure that your body is able to process whatever hormones are put into you, because it's not just enough to add more. That's a very Western kind of way of thinking. We want to prime and pump the body so it's efficient and effective at using those hormones, packaging them up and expelling them out. That's super important. So the Dutch test is one of the elements that I use. That's a great question. Now, I did also promise that I would talk about getting ready for a good night's sleep. So if you are a woman who tends to have trouble falling asleep, let's talk about what that means, what you can do to help yourself, and long term, what are some of the issues that are related to having trouble falling asleep. So I talked about already the fact that if you have trouble falling asleep, those hours, so if you are, let's assume that every woman on here is trying to fall asleep between the hours of 10 and 11. So that's the first thing. If you can't utilize that 9 to 9:30 stage, right, that really beautiful surge of melatonin, that really natural progression of falling asleep, let's say that you're not utilizing that. Well, then the next stage would be to make sure that you are in bed before 11 so that you are asleep by 11, because then at least you're getting 1 hour of that really protective sleep. The sleep you get between 9 and 12 is more protective. It's all protective, but this is like gold star protection sleep, right? So we want to try to focus on getting as much sleep in those hours as many nights a week as possible. And the other thing, ladies, is our bodies in midlife are like toddlers, okay? In some ways. We really like ritual and schedule. The body likes to eat at around the same time. The body likes to go to sleep around the same time. The body likes to wake up at around the same time. Now, for those of you who have trouble waking up or you like to sleep in on the weekends, you will find that on those days that you're sleeping in the weekends, you're probably usually more tired. And that's because you're changing the rhythm of your body. The body likes the rhythm. The body likes to wake up and go to sleep around the same time and eat around the same time. So I just wanted to say that. Now, getting ready for sleep is really important. So here are some of the things to try to avoid in order to help you not only fall asleep better, but stay asleep all night. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to talk about that, but it's a little hard to talk about that because there's going to be a little overlap between this week and next week. But this week, I really want to focus on getting asleep. So there's a lot of people who believe that taking an Ambien is the way to fall asleep. Now, if you look at the studies show that people who take Ambiens, yes, it does help you fall asleep, but you really are only getting roughly 20 minutes more sleep than if you didn't. So let's focus on not taking the pharmaceutical. Let's focus on good sleep hygiene, which, yes, takes a little bit of responsibility, takes a little bit of action, takes a little bit of potentially self-restraint. But in the end and over time, it's worth it. Because again, what you do, ladies, in your 40s and your 50s sets the trajectory for what your 60s, 70s, and 80s look like. Now, I know that seems like a million miles away. It seems like that for me too. But I do know, having just helped my mom through, 2 major health issues, I know that the quality of her sleep is not great. And I've watched it over the past 10 years affect her life and her body and her quality of health. So this is why I'm trying to use the time when we have a lot of hormones, have things working for us, to change the lifestyle habits so that we can better our overall quality of health. So one of those is not relying on the sleeping pills, sleeping pharmaceuticals that are given, but rather to pull back on alcohol and heavy carbohydrate meals at night. Now, what I'm not saying is you shouldn't eat any carbs. I'm saying cut back on the heavy meals like the pasta, the rice, the bread, the big heavy sandwiches, and focus more on a meal that is fat, protein, and vegetable oriented. That's going to help keep you satiated, but not have your body working extra hard and also the rise of glucose, because that's gonna keep you revved up. It's gonna keep the engine revved up and also pack on the pounds. So you want to orient your meals to be earlier. You want to try to have 2 to 3 hours ideally between the end of dinner and when you get into bed, so that when you fall asleep, you're slightly hungry, or at the very least, you're not full. So if you're going to bed on a full stomach, you're probably not getting high quality deep sleep, which I'm going to talk about next week. Now, the next thing is try as much as you can to avoid alcohol also in those 2 to 3 hours before bed. It gives you a false sense of tiredness to drink the alcohol. But what the alcohol is going to do right before you try to fall asleep is it's going to spike your glucose in the middle of the night. So that's, again, I'm going to talk about that more next week. So you want to stay away from alcohol after dinner in particular, and you want to drink alcohol with protein. So that's going to help slow down how fast it gets into the bloodstream, right? So it's going to help regulate. And then if you're drinking alcohol, also try to keep it at a low carb situation, because your liver is going to deal with stage 1 toxin first, which alcohol is a stage 1 toxin. So you're going to want your liver to process that first and then not have a heavy carbohydrate meal afterwards. That's just taxing your liver more and not giving your liver enough detox and rest time in the middle of the night. So those are 3 things. The last thing I want to talk about is, 2 more things. The next thing is to try as much as possible. Everyone has heard this. This is nothing new, but this is major, and I see it all the time on the Dutch test. When I test women who have low melatonin, there's a direct correlation with low melatonin in midlife and blue light producing devices between the hours of 8 and 11. So the more time you can give yourself off of those devices right before bed, the better your melatonin production is. And remember, it's a major antioxidant. You are helping to prevent cancer. You are helping to keep your brain alert and strong. You're helping your brain detox as well. So there's a lot more than just sleep involved. These are big, heavy hitter elements to the quality and longevity of life going forward in the aging process. So that is one thing. And if you are going to use them, certainly turn the light way down. And on a lot of devices, you can even change the quality of light to make it more red. Now, Kristen, in the what's it called, comments below, there's a red like clip light that I've started using to get away from junk light. So when we talk about junk light, there's a lot of people in the biohacking world who call all light that comes from fluorescent, LED, or otherwise junk light. During the daylight hours, if you don't have trouble sleeping or falling asleep, a little bit of fluorescent and LED light during the day, blue light is fine. It actually wakes you up, it makes you alert. And part of that is because the blue light signals to the eyes that it's like around noon, between like 11 and 1, right? So what we don't want is we don't want that light towards the nighttime. If you have to, your job requires it. Sometimes I work with people on the other side of the globe, and so my nighttime is their morning. I'm always wearing orange lens blue light blockers. They don't have to be expensive. They're going to, the orange ones, not the ones that have they look clear iridescent, but the orange ones in particular are blocking out not only blue but green light, which is very important. I'm not going to talk about green light today because that's a little too biohacky for this. I want to really focus on sleep. But these cheap orange lens glasses, and anybody who has been on a call with me or works with me at night knows that I am religious about wearing my blue blockers because the quality of my sleep is supremely important to me. So that's something else I do. And then reducing any kind of LED or fluorescent lighting next to your bed, like if you're reading or doing something, whatever, meditating, reading, whatever, you can use this clip light that's very inexpensive, that is a red light. So it's actually not producing, we don't want to activate your body into awake mode. We want to help relax the body. This is why, our ancestors did everything by candlelight. So they sat by the fire, they used candles, and they never had sleep issues because they didn't have the modern problems, the ailments of modern life. So those are the things to not do, right? And some things to do. Now I want to talk about some protective measures that you can do to really help you fall asleep and get a good quality of sleep over the night. So I'm going to talk a little bit about these on the next one, but taking a magnesium supplement at night is enormously helpful. And I get asked all the time, what kind, how much, all of that. It's pretty specific to the person, but I will say generally most people can take 200 milligrams of magnesium at night and be perfectly fine. And most everybody is deficient in magnesium because our soils are depleted and our environment is quite toxic. Don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, I'm just stating the facts. So taking magnesium is a really good thing. The next thing I would say is taking some kind of bath or kind of like being in or around water that is also charged with either some, Epsom salt or sea salt or some essential oils. They all help to calm the nervous system. So pretend you have a work call, and there's nothing that we do for work that's like bliss out, right? Like everything we do for work at some point or another is going to activate us either in our stress response, in our nervous system, or activating our brain, kind of like, getting the brain kind of charged and fired up. So what we want to do is kind of relax those tendencies, and essential oils are one of the great ways, or botanicals, or a candle. So those are some other ways that you can help yourself to calm and slow down and prepare your body, signal to your body that now it's time to relax and get ready for bed. The last thing I'll say is put the devices away, get out a real book with real words on a real paper page and read for 5 or 10 minutes. It's one of the greatest ways to help you fall asleep, is to like literally use your brain at a time where it's starting to slow down. That kind of process helps to really quiet and calm the body again. So those are my tips and tricks to help you get ready for sleep, prioritize sleep, and prevent some of the triggers that help women from falling asleep. Kristen, do you have anything to add or any questions that came from that?
I have a question, but I think it's going to be better for next week because I want to ask, what if you feel like you could fall asleep all day and then you lay down to sleep and you can't sleep, you're waking up all night? Because I know a lot of women have that issue.
Why
but
are
I think
you tired?
But I think that might be a really good thing to
That's
segue.
Day 3.
Oh, day 3. Okay.
Day 3 question. Can you remember that question and ask it on day 3?
I can.
That's awesome.
I can.
That's awesome. All right, ladies. If this is something that you suffer from, if this is something that has been sort of a chronic condition over time, or if this is something that you see happens maybe in the last 2 weeks of your cycle or the last week of your cycle and during your bleed or during when you would generally bleed and you are looking for support and help, reach out. Kristen's going to put the link in the comments to reach out and talk about how we can support you on this journey to get your hormones in a more harmonious manner, to help you transition through this incredible time of life, which is teaching you, talking to you. Your body's always having this gorgeous dialogue with you to help you get everything in check so that when some of these hormones start to quiet down, you can activate them again. And you can activate parts of your life so that you can have the most vital, long life of quality and beauty. So I look forward to hearing from you. Until next week when we talk about part 2, which is what do you do? What does it mean and what do you do if you have trouble staying asleep in the middle of the night? Thanks again. I appreciate you. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.